Hi, Mike. Welcome to this transmission in our new channel, Divine Awakening. I'm Yssah, and Sean might be joining us in a bit. And in the meantime, Mike and I will be sharing with you a little bit about what Mike does. He, besides being a very good friend of mine, I am have followed his labor, what he does, his teachings, and he is very deep into the Kabbalah and the round table, all that information and wisdom related to the round table and Arthur and uh, well, so for those ones who don't know Mike, uh, Mike is a teacher in Kabbalah and in the round table. He's also an author of 4 books so far. Uh, I He will be sharing them with us in a little bit. And he's also a musician and the founder of Circle of Avalon and a priest. And if I'm missing something, just please tell so, Mike. So welcome, Mike. And please, can you tell us a little bit about this introduction about you that I have said?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And finally, we are here together to to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have followed each other for quite some time now. So it's really nice to be here and to share. No, I think you rather said it all. And in the introduction, I don't have much more to add to it. Maybe good for the listeners that Circle of Avalon is like a school, an esoteric school, mainly teaching about esoteric subjects related to the Western esoteric tradition. So that's Kabbalah, very specifically Toledano Kabbalah, and like you said, the Round Table, which is not just a myth and a legend, but it's a body of metaphysical knowledge. So it is a tradition in itself. Um, and the other thing is indeed my priesthood, which is the apostolic succession of Arimathea, which is let's say, an esoteric community that follows the path of Christ or the Christ teachings.
Mm, beautiful. And even though many of those titles can immediately be related to that esoteric, that mystic, and of course, a spiritual path, there, for instance, when you also talk about the round table, not being a mythos, not being just this story that we all heard about, or most of us heard about it when we were little children, when we were kids.
Right.
Um, and we will actually be talking about the round table in another live, in another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So today we will be talking about the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a spiritual science because actually the purpose of this channel is this podcast, Divine Awakening, is to bring information to people that is in resonance with expanding their level of awareness of all that information that is there, that has always been there, and that
Mm-hmm.
perhaps we weren't ready yet to see until now. And that's why it's showing, that's why it's manifesting, because everything works through resonance. So we have gone beyond in this path of enlightenment to go beyond our own shadows. We do it every day in order to be um, the highest version of ourselves. At least this is how I perceive it. I don't know. How about you, Mike? What brought you here? What brought you? What came to your life first? Kabbalah, round table, the priesthood. What?
Well, that's a very good question. I will not elaborate too long on it, but everything started at childhood already. So I could say that I had like mystical insights. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, but quite loosely. But I found in the church already mystical ideas and experiences. And I had a grandfather who was very sympathetic with it. And he was like a farmer. So he had this heartfelt connection. He didn't need to go to church, he always said. So that feeling, that connection with Christ in a sense, but also with the round table. And later on, I found what I experienced as a child. I found it in, or refound it, better say, in the Kabbalistic teaching. And of course, that's very general. That's why I say uh, very specifically also with the Toledano teachings of Zef Ben Shimon Halevi, because they're very straightforward and he uses, like many other traditions, by the way, the tree of life, the diagram behind me, but also he introduced the Jacob's ladder, which is a second diagram, which is really too tall to show on the screen, but it's like four trees of life within each other. And that diagram is a majestic metaphysical diagram, like you said, in which we can really, at least in the beginning, from a theoretical perspective, see all the layers, all the worlds or levels that inherently um, and potentially are within us, although we may not realize it at this very moment. So yeah, that has always drawn my my heart and my attention, and yeah, it's a lifeline, so to speak.
Yeah, once something opens up, then it won't stop, right? One thing comes and then another, and then when you turn around, you're already full of all this information that it's actually not that new,
Hmm.
right? It's like this part of remembrance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's a nice saying within the Kabbalah is that in the unfoldment of creation, which we can, of course, read in a lot of creation stories, not just Genesis from the Bible, but a lot of creation stories are all over the planet. So that's the unfoldment coming into being. In Kabbalah, they say this is the action of divinity calling forth into creation. So it speaks like the word. It speaks creation into being and it calls. And if the soul is awake, it will hear and it will answer. And
Hmm.
then the journey back, the return journey starts. That's a beautiful interaction between the ever calling divine and the soul who is attentive and open to it, which is one of the explanations of the word Kabbalah is to receive and to be available to the source. And then you, like you said, you start moving. And most of the time, there's no turning back.
Yeah. Yes. And even though if you would like to, like have second thoughts, the path will continue to bring you experiences until you say, okay, okay, I'm here. Well, I'm talking from a point of view, like more even view from my experience. So, yet
Yeah.
very grateful for that. Very grateful for that. I'm kind of moving because I'm just tuning into the where's the better lining. Okay, so if you see that the event
I
is
thought
a
it was the
little
planet, but it was you.
bit, yeah. Speaking about evolution and motion, well, also
It's happening as we speak. Exactly.
exactly, exactly. Well, you mentioned very like a lot of points that I would like to explore a little bit because there are so
Yeah.
many things to explore in Kabbalah that we could spend, like the workshops like you precisely offer that we
Yeah.
will also be talking about them later. But
Thank you.
for instance, in relation to the origin, as the title of this podcast is, like how when we tune into the Kabbalah as a spiritual science, like it's explaining the universe, how it functions, and the relation to the soul, and also how the soul functions, not only covering it as in a very let's say dogmatic way, like most people could think about Kabbalah, that is this religious teaching, which is not, because actually it's a spiritual and it's very esoteric, connecting to the all this mystic form of approaching to the origin, yet also from a scientific way. Um, very covering it from facts, not just hypotheses. It very related, which also makes me think about the Quran, where they also like they take all these scientific laws and facts into to cover all the topics, most of the topics. So all these teachings were really one with science. At some point, the paths separated within, like in our form of perception, they have always been one. You know, like actually, I don't know how you feel about this, but I believe that they would use the science to reach a higher connection to the spirit, to connect with higher forms or levels of consciousness, to expand our consciousness. That was the purpose of the science.
Yes.
You know? So,
Yeah.
well, that's one thing. And another thing that you mentioned also is the word. You know, when you said it is beautiful, this beautiful phrase, it also about like the knowledge is there when the soul is ready to receive. Well, in other words, of course, it made me think also about the Kybalion from Hermes Trismegistus, the three-time Thrine teacher, and Thrine-born teacher, or Thrine-born actually, but anyway. That's not the important thing. The at this right now, it's mostly like what the first phrase in the book says. The lips of wisdom. Well, I'm translating it from Spanish. I would have to check in English, but in Spanish, it would say, los labios de la sabiduría están abiertos solo para que está listo para escucharla, which is the lips of wisdom are only open for that one who is ready to listen to it. You know, so the information has always been there. It's impressive. And I would love to hear how the Kabbalah would explain this, if you can share it with us. But for instance, when like the universe reflects what we are inside, like we are the universe itself. Nevertheless, as we continue to evolve, there is a different order in the information that we're embodying, you know, like different patterns as the tree of life, different patterns, different geometries within. And all those different geometries generate as we come to evolve, come to generate awareness, come to generate wisdom, and all this empiric teachings. And what we come to see in our reality is precisely reflecting that inner changes, that inner transformation. So how would the Kabbalah explain this?
Well, again, all through the diagram behind me, which is the tree of life. And that diagram, also called the 32 paths of wisdom, contains the whole of existence. So that's nice that we don't have to talk about that any longer. But the origin where existence came from is called God. But it's not like a theological God. It is a transcendent concept of God as something beyond existence. And that beingness, called sometimes Ayin, Ein Sof, which means complete or absolute nothing, absolute all, and that eventually emanates or comes into existence And well, for the Kabbalist, in this particular idea or diagram, of course, not in a literal way, but
Yes.
this is a representation of existence. And it comes into being not just through the diagram, but in 4 stages or 4 worlds. First of all, it utters itself into a divine world, which is the world of pure light and oneness.
Yes.
And that world is like the backdrop of the whole of existence that is yet to come. So that unity is and shall always be.
Yes.
So that's the divine.
Uh, now, well, Sean has just arrived, and you were talking about unity, and he
Asha.
just arrived. So, yeah,
Yeah, that's a matter of timing, isn't
yes,
it?
exactly, exactly.
Very good.
Good to see you.
Same here. Thank you.
I'm just.
Yeah, you're a bit too tall, Sean.
Yeah. I'm finding one of the tall.
Right.
Yeah, now that he's here in Mexico, you can imagine that like he's very tall, so in comparison to, yeah, he's even taller. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, you got
So,
great energy. I like that poster too.
yeah, the tree of life. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were in this intro where Mike is sharing with us how he started in his teachings, because he covers a lot of ancient teachings, and now he was precisely giving an example of like how the universe reflects our inner self into our reality.
Right. Yeah.
And I also want to tell you, like, speaking of the tree of life, which is again present in all ancient teachings,
Mm.
in all mystery schools, they talk about this tree of life. And as how I see it and remember it, the tree of life is embedded in our DNA. And
Mm.
it's actually, I would like to show to you an image in a bit of something that I I say I discover it, although that word is like very, dun dun. I don't know if someone was aware of this as well before or at the same time or now, but it's
Yeah.
related to the tree of life. And
Mm-hmm.
I was diving into the history of the Kabbalah, and like some people say that it was related to Merkaba in Palestine, and other ones, well, Merkaba, we all know about that word, the
Mm.
vehicle,
Yeah.
and also that it began in Spain, like the official beginning of the Kabbalah began in Spain in Girona, and with Asael, and also with his teacher Isaac the Blind, who say, well, I'm
Mm.
not going to get like into very technical because like just, but what I want to say here is that I could see how the tree of life has evolved in its form of expression. Like some of
Mm-hmm.
them would put it as a cube, with little cubes inside. This after the Zohar, after they broke the Zohar, and many forms of variation. Also, the one of 13 spheres or sephirah. This is of 10. I was reading that there is this Sefer Iyun, which comes from France, and it has
Mm-hmm.
13 spheres. How do you feel about that? How do you perceive the difference in between the people that talk about the tree of life of 13 spheres or 10?
Well, you can see in all the different variations over the centuries and centuries that there are a few minor variations on the diagram that you see behind here, which is the 32 paths and the 10 Sephiroth. And most of the let's say, minor variations, most of the time they wither away. And because metaphysically, it's not sustained that well as a cosmological and metaphysical system as the 10 Sephirot. And this is also described in most of the classical texts, like the Sefer Yetzirah and the Zohar and the Sefer Bahir. They do not talk about the 13 at all. And they have good metaphysical ideas why it is 10 and not 11, and it is 10 and not 9, and definitely not 13. But nevertheless, it is important, not, but it is interesting why they came up with 13 or any other idea that we have seen in Kabbalistic history. Yeah.
Yeah, before, if you want to ask something, I just want to mention about the 10, for instance, what I have found, besides what I will show in a bit related to the 10, or, you know, the main pattern, the blueprint of it. The 10, when you do a dissection in the DNA, like you cut it, you will see that there is a decagon, you know, like the 10 Sephira, you know, so a decagon. So that's why I say it's embedded in the DNA, you know, it's like, it's, for me, it's just an expression, an extension, speaking about mirroring, reflecting of the information that is within. And I even heard that the 10 Sephira is also related to the 10, like in another book, they talk about this, like the Sefer Yetzirah, this is another one, that they refer to the 10 Sephira as the 10 parts of God, with the names, not the names that...
No, definitely. Yeah, there are many names for the Sephirot. They say those are the 10 garments, or the 10 expressions, the 10 utterances, many different ways of saying that those 10 are the expressions in existence of the thing that cannot be expressed, which is the I Ein Sof. And that's what I was talking about with the mirroring in worlds. So you have the divine world, and the divine world, the world of unity, mirrors itself in the creative world of Bria, the metaphysical world of archangels, where creation unfolds from moment to moment. And so that's the basic world, the fundamental world of creation itself. And that world, in turn, mirrors itself in the world of Yetzirah, which is the psychological world. But it's still a mirror, you see? So the worlds are not divided. Unity is not divided or broken. It is an undivided mirroring in worlds. And then, going to the DNA, the fourth world, Asya, it's the physical world. So the original world of unity through the other worlds is being concluded in physicality. So that's why the Kabbalists say is that physical reality is the final expression of divinity. And therefore, it's not apart from the divine equation or the unfoldment, but it is inherent in it. So therefore, this physical universe and your body is truly the temple of the Holy Spirit. And that's why they say the immanence of the transcendence is within the body, and she is called the Shekhinah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and it is within matter. It's not a metaphor. The Kabbalists say this is literally so.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the people who doesn't know, do you want to explain what Shekhinah is? Shekhinah.
Yes, in other terms, we could say, if you're a bit more acquainted with the Eastern systems, in yoga, for example, they call it Atman, or it is the Christ center, or it is, the divine light within. Because in Kabbalistic cosmology, you have God as the transcendent, so something which is beyond existence. And you cannot know something which is beyond existence because we are existent beings. Yet, and however, the transcendent brought itself, I'm saying not her or himself, but itself into existence. So that light or that spark is brought into being. And that's the immanence of the transcendence. And that is the Shekhinah.
Okay.
And in round table terms, that would be the Holy Grail, for example.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It is interesting how people refer it as a feminine force in some of the text. It's beautiful to consider it as, like both coming together. Speaking about unity. Is there anything you want to?
Sure. Yeah, used to dive a lot into that Kabbalah and wrote a lot pages and even learn how to tune into each sephra, the fruit of knowledge itself. I found various aspects as it goes up micro and macroly. I wanted to get your take. It's a lot, so like I'll kind of like name them, and then I'll want to go back to any that you felt like an interest talking specifically, and then you feel free to. On this like goes into many aspects, including tree of life going into both an aspect in us that gives us the ability to breed in the first place as opposed to being infertile, which is a psionic ability going into amplifying fertility, uh, consciousness in the aspect of life, and elevation of consciousness. There's the secret of life extension apparently in it, sending out of our state of dense high or density you want to go into, uh, and even micro macro system of interaction with the tree of life with the tree of Yggdrasil in Norse mythology. There's even world trees example in other religions and around the planet uh, that see this everything connected kind of system. And in the tree of Yggdrasil goes into the realms, and that overlaying with the Sephiroth, the realms, 9 primary incarnating realms of earth, but there being way more, and like even going into the system with like 10 or 13, and then the tree of death and Killapoth going into the quarantine hellish realms. The a going macroly to that applying to other planets and solar and then galactically. I find the pillars of wisdom, beauty, and strength like have a lot in the mystery school that people can build upon and tune into internally. There are planets for each node, angels apply to them, demons with the fruit peel that is something to release in the block or the shell or to go deeper into the fruit of knowledge and to get past and resolve chakras that interact with the body. So the body system and turning it on, the generators, the portals, even realm empowerment with the system and those planets. There's mystery schools in each one. Negative and positive emotions in each one to transcend and learn how to empower the vices and turn the vices into the virtues, the consciousness, the level, the ascension, turning on, and earning abilities, magic currents that can be applied to greater knowingness. That's just the start. Any of those you felt an interest and intrigue that and thing that you've explored with the deepness that you've gone into this?
Well, that's a lot. So I think we have to pick out something for the listeners to make it comprehensible. And of course, I don't know exactly who generally your listeners are, how acquainted they are with the material that we are talking about. Well, talking about macrocosm, microcosm, like you briefly also mentioned, the Kybalion and Hermeticism. Of course, that's all present within Kabbalah, within the Tree of Life and Jacob's Ladder, the extended tree. They talk in Kabbalah about countenances or partsufim, which are faces in a sense. So those are sometimes mentioned in the sense of the Sephirot. So that's plural from one of the circles, the Sephira. But for example, in Toledano Kabbalah, they say a partsufim is like part of the tree, like a kite shape. and that's a lower countenance, and you have an upper countenance. So the lower countenance is that's the microcosmic field of experience versus the macrocosmic or metaphysical dimension of experience. But of course, like you said, they mirror each other. So in a sense, they are not separate from one another. So that macrocosmic dimension is not just to be seen as physically a cosmos or universe outside of us, or even something which is up there, but the principles are all within us. And that's something that Kabbalah really can explain very well through the tree of life. So all the archetypal forces and entities, they are within the human psyche in the microcosm. And they play out in their own constellations, as it were, in psychological terms. I mean, they form and shape our personality. Well, we don't have a clue that they are archetypes, but they would call it me or the ego. And we all have a different constellation in our psychological makeup. That's why we act it out in a different. So that's an important part in spiritual work in general, not just in Kabbalah, is to discover what are these principles within my own psychological world, and how can I work with them.
Now that you talk about constellations before our show, I was thinking if the tree of life would be embedded, or it could be overlaid in a specific constellation, that could fit perfectly. If there is any specific constellation that the tree of life fits perfectly?
Very much. Well, you have, for example, Kabbalistic astrology. So you can put your birth chart up the tree here, and instead of seeing it in a circular diagram, as in classical astrology, which is, of course, perfect and fine, you can put it on the tree as a Kabbalist. And it just opens a different relationship to how you see the planets and the zodiacal signs within your chart. And you can even make this diagram, put it on the floor, even life size, and then you can go through the constellation. I mean, you have all these constellation therapies these days, but I'm sure that it wasn't called that way, but Kabbalah had it all already. It's yeah.
I do that. Well, I haven't done that lately, but when I started translating codes, like all this geometry, I would print them, and use it as yoga mats, as to perform many, like psychic configurations and so forth. Before showing to you the tree of life, I see that some people don't talk about the 11 Sephirot, which is, well, they don't call it, they don't consider it actually a Sephirot, right? It's the dot. And how I tune into it, because I can see that it's located in the throat in your poster. So doing that relation, what I remember is that the dot represents all the information of the universe, and also that's why it's precisely located in the expression. It's because it's the information that we are come to liberate, to bring in all that wisdom, all that universal knowledge. So it's hidden somehow, but it's to be expressed. So
sure.
Do you want to say something before about the 11?
I've seen it with the throat, with third eye area, given area, like the hidden, so it's like a hidden mystery school or pathway that's taken. What do you know about it?
Yeah, well, indeed, in the diagram behind me, it's more or less located here, but traditionally it involves the whole face. So instead of only the throat and the third eye, actually it encapsulates all the internal senses. So we have physical senses of seeing, hearing, etc. Da'at covers all the mystical senses, so to speak, the internal senses. And well, the literal translation from Hebrew, da'at, is called knowledge with a capital K. Yeah. So that is, in Greek, that would be gnosis. So that's knowing without knowing. You can't learn it. You can't read it in books. And if you teach someone something, you are not transmitting this knowledge. It can only come through a direct experience, sometimes called mystical experience, of the one who receives. And that's an important part of the Kabbalistic work, is try to open actually from the center of the tree, which is Tiferet, which is the heart center, and the path straight upward through the art, through actually Keter, which is the source. That's the path of awe and wonder. So the opening of the art is a spiritual stance or an attitude towards life, that everything is new every moment. And your willingness to always approach life on its own terms, not according to your interpretations of how we learned it. And that's one of the mysteries of what the art is, in a sense, asking from us. To be open, to wonder, and to be in awe every day, again and again. And the way down from Keter to Tiferet, and that's the path of inspiration. That's how the Ruach HaKadosh comes through, and we, as a human being, a Kabbalist, may receive it. So all the paths on the tree of life are a two-way street. It's the microcosm moving inwards, and it's the macrocosm coming downwards, so to speak. So this is one example of the path from Tiferet to Keter, where you see that.
I can help to see the correlation in between da'at and the word, the Kemetic word duat, which is precisely like the cosmos. But then again, it can be the microcosmos or the macrocosmos, you know, like that. And there is, now that you said what Kabbalah is, that receptivity, that can go into many layers, you know, like normally when I give a course or a session, I do a lot of emphasis on the fact that no matter what we wish to manifest, if we are not receptive, and that can go at many scales, what is enabling or disabling that receptivity, we cannot embody that what we wish for, you know? So, and receptivity for me, it's also perception. How can you perceive something if you're not receptive? So, and that receptivity can go at many scales. So Kabbalah, as also like going through the etymology with the cube, Kaba, you know, and Allah, how would you, because I have also like tuned into that, you know, like a Kabbalah, which is cube, and it's not only related to Islamic word or Arabic word, it also is connected to a Mayan word and to a Kemetic word, and Allah, you know, like for God. And so why do you think that name is also embedded in those words that are quite resonant in the Arabic words in this case? Or
it seems that they match. And well, I had a few talks and discussions with Kabbalists who are native speakers in Hebrew, and they do not all agree with linguistically cross-fertilizing with all these different languages that may sound the same, but they do not mean the same all the time. So we have to sometimes be a bit careful with how to relate all the different names and images, but I'm always in favor of an inclusiveness and universality of things. And I know that Hebrew and the Islamic languages are very much connected, but what you said about receptivity and receiving, there's a saying in Kabbalah, it is one thing to receive, but can you contain and can you hold what is being received? So reception and being open to the source is very important. But the other part of the work is the purification work of the microcosm. So that part that you really need to work on yourself. So do you know the vessel before you can really receive and contain something which is much bigger than you, so to speak? So that's an important part of the Kabbalistic work as well. You can try to contain all you want, but and that really goes back to the stream of Lurianic Kabbalah, where it is being said that in the beginning, God created the universe in the likeness of this tree of life. But the worlds, they shattered and broke into different vessels. And creation didn't happen at once. And it is because there was no unification between the different Sephirot. So that's a clue to the Kabbalists also in these times, is that become a coherent whole and make everything related to itself. Everything has its place in the universe, so also in your microcosmic universe. Yeah. And if there are broken relationships within you, or if your tree isn't whole on the inside, then be very aware of that. So, and be careful with not inviting the whole universe within if your microcosm is still not intact and not ready to receive the whole thing. And that's also a bit of common sense metaphysically within Kabbalah. I hope I made myself a bit clear.
Yes, yeah. You did, and it's beautiful because I also I love to play with the words, and when I say play, it's do it very consciously and see how they intertwine, you know, and how they fit in honoring each own concept and also create a universal story altogether.
Yeah.
For instance, I heard now that you said containing. There is a Mayan ritual that when a pregnant woman is having, let's say, problems with her baby, they build a cube, which for the Mayan, Inkaba is my name is. Like also related to, in relation to the cube, they create a cube and then a wire made of copper, and they put it in front of a ritual to contain the energy of the soul for it to go through all the 9 months. They containing all that energy inside that cube. So yeah, it's I would call it like a very the first word that came to me was romantic form of bringing all together. It can also be like a very artistic, like a very like a dance, you know, bringing all that information together and respecting that the essence and the core of them all.
Right.
You want to?
I wanted to ask you, what were some of your most profound experiences in decoding and observing Kabbalah and the Tree of Life in consciousness expansion and aha moments and like emotional changing you kind of experience?
Well, it's normally something you don't talk about much, and again, sometimes it's not recommended to talk about these things because you may disempower these authentic experiences. But I value your question. I think one of the most important things for me is that the tree of life really becomes alive in and through you. So it's not just a concept on a poster somewhere, but the 10 emanations, they really become alive in and through you. So you really become a metaphysical, well, universe on the inside, and it becomes second nature to yourself. So, for example, I'm also a psychotherapist, a physiotherapist. So when I'm with people, um, I see them in a tree of life scheme, so to speak. I see them as a microcosm, and they tell not just their personal story, but they tell the story of the tree of life, and that in itself is of enormous value, not just for me, but also the people who I work with. But I will tell you another thing, Sean, because what I just said is also from my own experience, where in certain times you are very, as a person, you can be very inspired and enthusiastic about wanting to approach divinity. But I learned that sometimes it can be extremely scary and it can be too much. And I had that in dreams or in certain visions, that you have to know, well, that only a certain amount of experience you can contain. So I've experienced the beauty of it, and also, in a sense, sometimes the fear that you can have from it, because it's enormous.
Mm.
Yeah. Even love can be overwhelming, especially when we talk about that level of being.
Do
Yeah.
you think it could be related to a specific limit that our biology has or could have at the moment? And that we're talking about energy, I'm bringing new or primordial ranges of
Yeah.
energy to our body, after living
Yeah.
in other frequencies. So it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
could you relate
Well,
it to
I'm running a Kabbalah group here in Holland for about 13 years. So I have people who are coming for quite a while. And the way inwards or upwards is called teshuvah. It means the way to return, or what we said in the beginning is you answer the call from above. And you start actually at the lowest world. I'm saying lowest because it's not a degraded terminology here. Is you start at the level of the body, and then you go gradually into the domain of the psyche, the personality, the ego. First, know who you are there. What can you contain within your body on just a physical level, and that personal psychological level, the ego? Do you know your shadows? Do you know all these different concepts within you? And before you even think about going into the chariot and catapult yourself into the higher worlds. So there's a gradual building up of knowledge and experience, da'at again. And that purification process is this gradual gaining of self-knowledge until you reach into those levels of Bria, or the heavenly worlds. And those are very well described within Kabbalah. So the equivalent of the certain of those certain levels of the heavenly realms, or the Hekalot, the halls within you. But first you need to explore them before you can know them, before you can contain them. So my approach from the Kabbalah is start with the levels that you're at, and not work from the top down and try to invoke and invite all these things that you're maybe not ready for. We are born for these kind of things in stories, even in fairy tales and the like, and also Kabbalistic stories. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want to say something?
It's not where all people want to start. Some people want to start with the stars and the confetti and all the spiritual bliss. But Kabbalah is really something that properly builds up the experiences from where we are towards the more subtle realms of spirit and beyond.
For the audience out there that doesn't know too much about it, and to excite them and get them, flared up with the pursuit of this knowledge and to contact you. In the various masters and ascendants and people that have gone down this path and learned it very well, have they described different states of consciousness and achievement that they've experienced that you can get the audience excited about? Ooh, you can end that through this path. Ooh. And then it comes to you.
Yes, well, there is like a paradox in going up and down the tree of life and into those higher realms, because, like we said, everything mirrors itself. So even going through the bodily stages of experience, those are already reflections of the heavenly realms. So gradually, most of the time, people understand this, and that working through the body is not just something redundant or something only physical, but it is actually working through also the 7 stages of the spirit. So going up is actually going within, and going down the tree is the same thing. So it's a paradox. It's not that you're going away or you're approaching something. The way is always inwards with Kabbalah.
Yeah. And like to add to that, like in states of consciousness that have been described, kind of like Buddhism and Hinduism goes into describing for different consciousness, like transcending suffering and nirvana and the bliss states and the going into pure love or non-thought or like everything being in harmony, kind of things like that. And what are like some of the symptoms that some of the master Kabbalists have noted in their writing?
Oh, very much, yes. Well, at the moment with my group, I'm going actually through the 7 heavens. So that's the Briatic world, and they may be different in wording, but I think eventually there's an overlay with different traditions. So the first heaven, for example, is called the veil. So that's the place where we talk about devotion. So how to cling unto God. So make everything in your life an expression of divinity. And like we said in the beginning, your physical body, try to feel and see your body as a moving temple, a tabernacle, so to speak, in biblical terms. Within it, the traveling spirit, which is the Shekhinah. And the second heaven would be purification or purity. And the third heaven would be humbleness, for example, and so on. So the different heavens, they describe these different stages, but in a different way, a little bit than Buddhism would do. But they're quite similar. So, for example, the red one here is justice. So the deep knowledge of what is the law of karma, what is the law of cause and effect, that deep insight. This is the law of compassion, the blue one on that side. The almost transpersonal ability to forgive. So this is the law of harmony, the expression of harmony and truth, and so on. So there are so many different ways in Kabbalah that have similar ways of saying the same thing.
Okay, and for the people who that don't know much about Kabbalah, when we are talking about the Sephira, or the spheres, it's meant to, like, they are in our, like, projecting at many scales in our body, and they are to be ignited in harmony, to be known, as you were saying, to discover them or uncover them, and to unify them in order to connect with what is Kether, which is the crown, and reach that level of expansion. without leaving the body. This is something that we are to achieve every day by
Yes.
dancing, cooking, like being in this daily life.
Yeah.
And yet bringing heaven to earth, right?
That's a very important thing. Yes. There's a quite simple, in theory at least, idea in Kabbalah which says you transcend and include. So you transcend a level because you have knowledge of it, you experience it, and then you include the former level. You transcend and include. You transcend and include. So enlightenment or illumination in Kabbalah doesn't mean that you go up a ladder or a tree to the highest expression of divinity and then there you are and don't care about the rest. No, illumination means you bring into yourself the whole of experience of the tree of life, like you just said, Yssah. That's exactly true. Yeah.
And actually how it enlightens, it's like energy, how energy goes. You know, that
Yes.
is the Shekhinah that comes from Malchut all the way up, to say it's somehow enlightening and connecting all the Sephirah.
Yeah, that's the path of return, exactly. Sometimes called the path of the serpent. So you go up the tree in an alternating way, always passing the middle. But as life goes, you go through the dualistic, polarizing laws of the universe that we can't escape it as long as we are incarnate. But the middle pillar is actually the will or the kaf of God. This is where the Shekhinah is at every passing moment. So she holds the center, as it were, as we weave up and down, like that DNA strand you were talking about, in a sense. Yes, and it's a psychological internal process, and at the same time, of course, it's the process of us as a human being in and through the world. And of course, those two worlds are not separate. The way that we are on the inside is how we are expressed on the outside. But how can we relate to the center and keep it? How can we keep that center, that axis? And then the more that we can do it, the more we are in tune with Shekhinah. And then we can, step by step, bring heaven to earth. And that in itself, that abstraction is, like we just said, and in your question, how can you bring those metaphysical spiritual constants into your life? How do I practice forgiveness and compassion or justice or humbleness? And you can do that with every person in the street, at the supermarket. That's a matter of how do you consciously apply it.
Now
And
that you
that's
mentioned,
very Kabbalistic. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Now that you mentioned metaphysics, for me, metaphysics is what, because you don't like, when it started, you would hear it all the time, you know, like the metaphysic world
Yeah.
and the metaphysics field. And then
Yeah.
the quantum physics started to be more and more known.
Yeah.
So now that quantum physics is talking about all this entangled universe, then it brings actually a solution to many of the topics that
Yes.
metaphysics was created for. You know, it's bringing solution to all those problems, as how scientists would say, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, science, in like we said, you have four worlds in Kabbalah. The lowest world is Asya. That's the world of physicality. And that's the world of physical science, of physics, of mathematics, of astrophysics, and what have you. And those are very important to explain this world, the sensual world. But as we know, those scientific disciplines have their limits. They are limited to the degree that this physical world is limited. Therefore, we have the sciences of psychology. So a world higher, you have different disciplines and sciences that explain the psyche. And then, well, we have different sciences that do cover metaphysics, like Kabbalah or Buddhism. and they explain how that world functions. So we have different disciplines that cover different realities of the completeness of the wholeness, and they all have something valuable to say about the totality of existence. And Kabbalah includes it all. They do not exclude anything because all the four worlds are there. It's just important that we know what we are talking about.
Yes.
When we talk about science, for example. Yeah. But metaphysics is probably the most simple of all the sciences. It just says, well, you have four laws and that's it. And everything depends upon it. And that makes it extremely simple.
Four pillars, four laws, for, like this.
Four worlds.
Yes.
Exactly.
Four
Yeah.
reigns.
Yeah. And the most important law is the first law. That's the law of one. Everything is an undivided whole, and it will always remain that way. No matter what we are doing as a human being, or what happens in the universe, everything will remain an undivided unity.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. In my research, I found that the Sephra are also alive, and they talk and communicate to me, and they'll get attention in various ways based on their house and what they're having to do with. And we went into polarity of learning and knowing something, and the deeper mystery school, with things like knowingness or beauty or wisdom or strength or justice. There's opposite,
yeah.
And that's usually in the growth stage. The person is facing that opposite and is making them need to understand it, know it, and then how to resolve it, like the vice and the virtue that I said to others, to transform that. And the negative emotion or the thing to learn and scale and grow past and go beyond, knowing it in and out, as well as the gatekeeper consciousness of the Sephiroth, that's like the outer layers to going deeper. Can you talk a little bit of that and like maybe like for one of the Sephiroth as an example of like your experience in going deeper into the fruit of knowledge, please?
Yes. There was a delay in the, so I didn't catch the last part. Sorry, Sean.
Okay, so like, can you talk a little bit about your experience in going deeper into the fruit of knowledge, going past the layers of the outer shell of where the challenge in the polarity of knowing deeper at Sephiroth School of it. Just for one of them, whatever you prefer, that's like coming to mind that you have a passion about, one of the Sephiroth.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I understand your question. Well, for example, I'll give you a personal example. Let's take Tiferet, beauty, the sixth, the Sephira on the tree, the sixth dimension, which in psychology would represent yourself. That's not the self with a capital S. That's not the Atman or the Shekhinah, but that is the psychological self. In relation to Yesod, which is the ego. Those are two different concepts within the human psyche. Now, like I said before, you can put your chart upon Tree of Life. And then you find your sun sign within Tiferet, because Tiferet is related to the sun. Well, I have my Gemini in Tiferet, for example. In Kabbalah, they say, first of all, know your sign. Then explore and grow your sign, and then outgrow your sign. So if this Sephira talks to me in a personal way, it is because I see and feel the Gemini within that part of myself. And I'm not talking about this in any way like dogmatically, but as a field or discipline. I'm talking about astrology, how to explore yourself. So I could see all the different traits of the Gemini within me. And I mean, the light side and the dark side of Gemini. Now, I take one example. In the beginning, when I started my esoteric work at the age of 20 somewhere, I really felt the Gemini within me wanting to gather all the information possible. I was a member of the Golden Dawn. I was a member of many different fraternities and temples and lodges, what have you. So it was about details, about information. And well, that took a while, and I had a good time in a sense, and it was worthwhile that I did it that way. But if you don't want to become a jack of all trades, as they say in English, you want to become someone specialized in something, or you want to dig deeper so you really find something profound, you can't explore all the different traditions all the time. So I had to see that particular trait of the Gemini and say, that is something that doesn't serve me. Instead of diverging, I need to converge. And that's why I chose a few specific things that were the closest to me, paths to follow and to teach. So I hope that is a good answer to your question, Sean.
Mm.
It's very down to earth in a sense. It's very personal, but and any sign in that sense can be investigated or explored on the tree, of course. Yeah.
Now, as the tree, and even as how we were talking in the beginning, has been, let's say, I wouldn't call it like officially evolving, because there has always been, you know, like mainly that 10 Sephira tree of life, but having its branches, you know. Based on this 10 Sephira, I would like to share this, because you also mentioned like the Holy Grail in around
I
the
couldn't
table.
resist. Sorry.
Yeah, great, great. You will see now why it's, yeah. And also, like, that would lead us to the Templar Knights, which was this very big symbol of them. And you will see what I'm talking about, because maybe you're right at this moment like saying, what is she talking about? But you will see what I'm talking about in a bit then. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And yeah. And
Can you see it?
Not yet. There we go.
okay. Well, here in the middle, we see the tree of life, the one that you are showing behind you. And on the right, it's the same, but multiplied by 4, directing to the 4 cardinal points. And we can see how in the center, the Templar cross creates in red. So for me, how I remember is that we were given, like, basically, like, as a birthright, to say it somehow, 1/4 of the information, and we are to remember the rest of it in order to accomplish the 4/4. Speaking about the 4 chord, you know, in order to complete the 4 rings. So this is 1/4, and when we multiply it, then is the particle of light. Now, this would lead to also the Christic particle, but also to the crucifixion, because it's not moving, it's steady. So when we move it, it's when we enlighten our particle of light. We can see that here, this is this very famous, my computer is very slow. Can you pass me that? Yeah, because it's very slow. We can see on the top left part, the picture taken to a photon, you know, and we can see it's the Templar cross. And it's exactly in the one when it multiplies. Yes. Yes. So for me, it's so beautiful how we can get to discover, you know, regardless if it applies to some beliefs or not. It's like how we create our own universe, that kind of self-knowledge that you were talking about, you know, the importance. I'm just going to stop sharing. So
yeah, I think it delays the frequency. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get to listen to everything, or?
No, I heard you perfectly, but sometimes there's a delay in the streaming or something, so that's the only thing. But no, I saw everything. Yeah, no, and yeah, everything of course is based upon the geometrical shapes, from the point to the line to the triangle to the square and so on. So there's so much to discover there, definitely. Yeah, and that diagram in four directions, it looks a bit like the tree of life in the Lurianic Kabbalah, which is a very challenging way of looking at the tree of life, because it's not just a vertical tree, it goes in many directions.
Would you say in a fourth dimension?
No, I don't think we can say that, because Luria just had a different cosmology about the tree. This is also talking about at least four dimensions or beyond. So that's not the point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this you can keep on multiplying it, and you will see like all these schematic shapes, and there are many ways to connect with it. I believe that the essence is that we are light, that we are in this path to enlighten ourselves by knowing ourselves.
Yes.
And through this remembrance in many ways. And that I believe that Kabbalah is one of the, every time that I told you once when we talked, like the Sefer Yetzirah, and I have another book here, it's the Sietre Otriot and Ortiot, and that are encoded books, that this is something that I want to say, like in my experience, when you read these books, they are automatically bringing all these upgrades. You know?
Yeah, they're invoking knowledge,
yes.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. Well, at the same time, some of those, let's say, classical books like the Sefer Yetzirah, there's also a growing problem for the psyche of the human being of the 20th and the 21st century, because not all of it resonates with the thoughts and ideas and the identity of the human being of today. And so sometimes we need to have like we need a metaphysical translation how to read these books, like reading the scriptures, for example. And that is really, I found in Kabbalah, what the metaphysics and the tree of the Kabbalah can do for us. How to read the old texts and to really uncover what they are still saying. Because sometimes otherwise, we just see them as something that never happened, because you say, well, you know, this is just an incredible story of Moses splitting a sea, but I don't think it's very likely that it ever happened. But Kabbalah can explain it through its metaphor and analogy and symbolism, and then see it in a metaphysical context. And that's a great treasure that you can find within the Kabbalistic diagram.
Definitely. And speaking about Moses, I was listening that each let's say prophet is related, or they related to one of the archangels, and that Moses is related to Metatron.
Well, probably because he is said to be the greatest prophet that ever lived. Metatron is said to be the greatest teacher, or the teacher of teachers, the lesser Yahweh. So the one who is in direct contact with Metatron receives the full, constant revelation of the divine world. So I'm not surprised. Yeah, but indeed, on the Tree of Life, the different Sephirot or archetypes, you can see all the biblical archetypes as well, like Aaron and Moses and Jacob and Joseph and Isaac and Abraham. They're all there. Yeah.
So, well, before asking you to share where people can find you and the courses and retreats that you're offering, would you like to ask something? Say something?
What as a ambassador for the Tree of Life, do you think there's anything that the tree would like to share with people in knowledge if you were to be open to like asking it to give you some inspirational thoughts?
I don't think I understand your question completely. Sorry about that.
Find as the Tree of Life is worked with, it communicates through a person. So, as an ambassador for the Tree of Life in greater depth than most people, what do you think the tree would want to share with the audience?
Well, it's a mirror of who you are as a human being. So I always say, look into it and try not to interpret the tree, but allow it to speak for what it is. And I think that's the greatest treasure of it all. And the tree includes all the four worlds, the whole of existence. It's a mirror of the transcendent. And so you can never be bored of the diagram. So that's what I would say, is look at it or make it yourself. Even if you see it on the internet, draw one and put it up there on your wall, in your bedroom or wherever, in your sanctuary, and use it and look at it, meditate upon it. Yeah.
Yes. I could go and commenting topics for hours and hours, but we can leave it for our next
yeah, it goes very fast
together. Yes. So well, how can people reach you?
Yeah, so basically I have two websites. The first is called circleofavalon.nl. So that's NL from Netherlands, but it's an English website. There you can find everything related to Kabbalah, the Round Table, and the ASA. And then one website, KabbalahMysticalSchool.com, and that's just purely about Kabbalah. And well, you can find me on social media under my own name, Mike Bice, or Circle of Avalon. And yeah, if you're interested in joining certain activities online or even in person, most activities I actually had the last couple of months with the publishing of my book. But there's a big event in Europe. It's a 4-day retreat in Austria about the Western mystery tradition. So that will all be about Kabbalah, the Round Table, and the sacred teachings of Christ. So if you're interested in it, have a look. It's on the website, on both actually. And yeah, if you want to have any questions, then come back to me through the email.
Any other events or books or anything else you want to like to plug?
Well, let's start with my latest, which is The Paths on the Tree of Wisdom, published by Watkins in London. So this is a contemporary beginner's guide to the Kabbalah. They asked me to write a beginner's guide. And of course, there are more books on how to start with Kabbalah. So this is my attempt to explain it with a lot of practices and meditations and exercises in every chapter. So not just theory, a lot of diagrams are within, a lot of trees of life, and trying to gradually build up. Actually, to make of every day a Kabbalistic session. So there's a very worthwhile invocation within it, how to start your day or how to start a meditation. So that's a book which is just published since February. And these are my books from 2019 and 22. My first book, Kabbalistic View on Science, which covers quantum physics and biology, and in a sense, psychology. And this is the second part in 2022, extension on biopsychology and quantum physics, and a new topic, which is neuroplasticity.
Beautiful.
Yes, well, it's my background, of course, is coming from the medical field, so I could tap into some knowledge from the days that I was teaching university, anatomy, physiology, neuroscience, etc. So yeah,
I cannot stop myself from asking this question, because I also relate everything that I do to neuroscience, and yeah, so
yes.
passionate I'm about it. How in particular do you connect, like briefly, people can also buy your book. I will love to get one. I will ask you later. Where can I find it? And because I have my ways for approaching, but I would love to hear how you connect the Kabbalah with through this quantum physics and like the neuroplasty, like briefly. I know just to keep the suspense,
Yeah. Well, probably the basis of quantum physics is that there's a unified field. That's Keter. That's the realm of unity. But that unified field, it shows itself in relativity through a wave and a particle. These are the principles of Chokmah and Binah, energy and structure. And these two, the father and the mother of the universe, the parents of the universe, they show that everything is built upon a potential, a wave, and something that manifests, which is the mother. But they cannot be separated because they're always held together in the unified field, in the first principle of Keter. But they are both within the side pillars on the tree. So we experience them as either one of them. So, or you're in the field of experience and potentiality, or the potential has collapsed into something, an idea or something physical. Now, in the middle pillar, we're going back to Da'at, that's the last example. There you can have an experience that both are present at the same time. This is the mystical experience that they talk about, the same as in Buddhism, is that emptiness can be full and fullness can be empty. So you can have a wave, and at the same time, you can have a collapse of a particle. So those are a few principles on the tree. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And they match quite well. They do. Yeah.
And yeah, beautiful said. And in relation to neuroplasty, for instance?
Neuroplasticity. Well, there we go into what on the tree we could see as the nervous system, the physical nervous system. Okay. And from the upper part of the tree, that's where you have consciousness, how from a hierarchical point of view in consciousness, you can, with certain meditations and exercises, you can enhance and stimulate the regeneration of nerve cells, but also the growth of latent nerve cells that have never been activated. And there are a lot of them in our nervous systems, especially the central nervous system. There's a lot of latent material there. And so I talk about how, at least in theory, could you try to stimulate those cells within the brain. It's a very technical story, but yeah, that's another part. And I use the tree of life as a symbol of the nervous system. So a nerve cell looks like a sephira, and it has a dendrite, and it connects to another one. So you can see the tree of life as a connection of different nerve cells that lead from a certain impulse and a neuro potential towards some effect somewhere else. So you can use the diagram to illustrate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you add to that the gematria, you know, like the numerical value each letter, now how it is encoded in the very same DNA, like well, we could go on and on, but definitely
exactly.
those who are listening, like the frequency of the letters, the frequency of the patterns, the frequency of how all comes together, it is very connected to the spiritual science. So it's very effective. Very, very effective.
Yssah,
it's extremely interesting. Yeah.
Yssah, how can people reach you?
Well, I have my website, and it's omnivision.hunuh.com. My media, Yssah Arslev, and also in YouTube, Facebook, and my YouTube channel. Now our channel YouTube channel Divine Awakening, where we will be also uploading this episode with Mike.
Our talk.
And yes, speaking of which, precisely everything related to the quantum field, the holofractographic plasma technology, how to unfold the genetics within, the full potential within the brain, precisely through sacred geometry, frequencies, and a very specific encoded light language, and all that ancient technology precisely to reach our full potential. Yeah, and more. And how can people reach you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sean Bond of PsionicLeague, PsionicLeague.com, PsionicLeague YouTube, and Divine Awakening YouTube. And you can reach me for sessions, consultations, clearing feelings, release of pain, ability products in the video, doing events, full disclosure in Florida are coming up, so yeah, look out for that in the description. And yeah, come get a session from all of us and Mike, and let us know in the comments if you want to see more Mike, and give him love, and share this video wherever you can, and get us past the censorship algorithm, and smash that like button, and yeah, help us get out there. And see if you want to support Mike and reach him. What's your email or things people can contact you?
Yeah, well, first of all, you can find it on websites, but otherwise it's mikebice@rocketmail.com. That's the easiest. So it's a Yahoo account, Rocketmail. Yeah.
Okay, we'll put that.
Yeah.
And I'm also PsionicLeague@gmail.com. Okay, so yeah, everybody, let us know if you want to see more of Mike, and let us know in the comments.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be with you.
Yes.
And wonderful interaction and questions, so much in depth. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, see you next time to talk about
definitely
around the table. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. All right. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.